Welcome back to our forum. We are heading towards the fourth and last panel discussion of the day. It is quite a special panel that we are starting as we invited young and emerging arts professionals to actually listen to all the conversation, not only the ones taking place here, but as you understood, also the one that took place online over the past weeks, and to share with us their main takeaways and the points that they feel resonate the most with their own lived experiences, but also with the way they see themselves continuing on their professional trajectory. So we're going to have a format where I introduce each rapporteur, give them the floor, and they will share their takeaway, and then I will ask you to ask questions or to reflect back, and we will hopefully have a constructive, beautiful conversation with all of you in the room, keeping in mind that this conversation is about looking forward, is about proposing simple or complex solutions to simple or complex issues, okay? So I want to acknowledge that we should have a sixth rapporteur with us today. But Clara, who was supposed to join us today and who was the rapporteur of the very first pre-forum webinar we had, was stuck in Lisbon because of the massive power cuts the country went through. So no subway, no train, no airport, no traffic, no nothing. So fortunately, she is with us in mind, and I will carry her words as she provided me with her notes. So I will very gladly share her main takeaways and ideas and concerns. So I'm going to start right away by introducing Lina Allia. Lina is a colleague where she's working and contributing to On the Move, as she's currently doing a PhD at the University of Lyon 2. She's based in Marseille now, and she's collaborating with Radio Grenouille as a development and cooperation coordinator. Lina is originally from Algeria and spending time in the south of France, which is, a lovely destination. And Lina has been following the second panel on transitioning to the international arts and cultural ecosystem, revisited motivations and challenges. So Lina, you have a mic with you. It is on, hopefully.
Is it?
Yes, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Yohann. Thank you, On the Move, and thank you, all of the Riga partners, for your welcome. First of all, I would like to thank Maya, Jennifer, and Adam for the amazing panel and the very insightful thoughts and discussions you've shared with us yesterday. So I have many takeaways about the panel, but also takeaways I have from my professional path so far. So I will be sharing a few thoughts and feelings with you. I won't be very long because I'd like to give more time to discussion after all of my comrades here present their takeaways. So first of all, I would like to start with the notion of partnerships and informal and non-formal training programs that were mentioned by a lot of panelists. And I think that what comes out to me is that they allow for bridging so many gaps that we've mentioned. So there are generational gaps, there are intercultural competencies gaps, to quote directly Udo from earlier, capacity building and the need for capacity and shared capacity building, and also the notion of centers and margins as presented by Rana also. So these programs and these opportunities and these models, like in PQ, for example, or MCH, are places and spaces and moments that allow for bridging these gaps. As a young emerging professional, I think I left the panel of yesterday specifically rewinding the 3 questions that Jennifer posed. The first one, that if I remember correctly, someone you've worked with actually told you, why do we do what we do? For whom do we do it? And what are we fighting for? And I think these 3 questions can sound cheesy, let's be honest. And you know, I'm kind of millennial, kind of Gen Z, so we have this aversion to cringe, and we don't want to be cringe, and we want to be cool. So what do we fight for kind of sounds, but at the same time, to me, it shows a gap, but also a bridging of a gap, because to me, it brings me to values and value systems, and the notion of social justice, if we were to make things political, which is very important. And I think it's both an area of discomfort and disconnect between generations and cultural professionals and professional contexts also, whether they be national, institutional, or local, but also an area of connection, an area of alliance, and an area of community, because usually most of the people we end up collaborating with or aim to collaborate with, in my experience at least, have been people where you kind of have this implicit connection and conversation where, oh, we share certain values, and that is an incentive for cooperation. So as I mentioned, the need for alliances and community and solidarity, as maybe the new Solidarities program is also a very good example of that, is something that is very important in this era we're all in. And I see that there are a lot of dualities, and I use the word duality intentionally because I don't want to speak of binary systems, but the duality between grassroots and civil society versus institutional organization, local development versus international development, growth versus the notion of success, being a small organization versus being a big one. I think all of these dualities kind of come in contact also with a lot of transitions and crises we're going through politically, digitally, democratically in Europe and outside. But what I'm trying to say through all of this overview of the space we're evolving in my opinion, is that through very tangible things that were said and shared, but also very meta and macroscopic things that were said, there is this realization I have been having progressively over the past few years, but also these past few days, is that doing tabula rasa is unrealistic. We cannot start everything over from nothing, ex nihilo. We kind of have to work with what we have collectively, and I think that's my conclusion for now. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you, Lina, for this. Maybe, and this is my bad, I will ask you to self-describe yourself very quickly, just in case we have participants with visual impairment
Yes.
in the room or online. But also I will ask you this question: what would you recommend us to do? Do you have a recommendation from what you heard so far?
I will take the time for describing myself to think of an answer. So I am a woman in my late 20s. I'm wearing all black and I have curly / afro hair, and I'm wearing Amazigh jewelry actually. And what I would like us to do, I think, and I'm directly quoting someone from a conference I've attended not so long ago, and it's inhabiting conflict and discomfort. I think we need to be more comfortable about discomfort, which I'm also quoting the panel from earlier. I don't see them, but thank you. It was an amazing line. I think that we are faced and facing an increasingly difficult professional contexts. I mean, as a young professional, I feel like it's like so crazy and so difficult, but maybe it has always been the case. I wasn't around 30 years ago, so I don't know, but I think there are a lot of difficulties, and there's maybe a tendency to turn the eye and like make it as though we don't see or hear the difficulties, but I think we kind of need to get dirty about it and like, you know, go at it and deal with it. That's what I would like.
Okay, thank you, thank you. A very valid point and recommendation. Hold your breath, I will come to you, okay? I know you want to interact with our young people. The second rapporteur I would like to have sharing is Andrew. Andrew Ogun is based in Wales. He's a poet, multidisciplinary artist, involved in music, involved in fashion, but he's been very active in support systems, informal and informal, to be able to promote diversity in the arts and especially in music. We were introduced to Andrew thanks to our dear member Wales South International, as Andrew has been working for a few years as an agent for change within the Arts Council of Wales. So Andrew, you participated in what we called a pre-forum webinar, which was entirely dedicated to the facts and figures and trends of mobility, where our colleagues who works on the Cultural Mobility Yearbook, Claire, is here, and also contributors to the Nordic Baltic Funding Guide were sharing a lot of insights and facts about mobility. So Andrew, the floor is yours for 8 minutes.
Okay. Hello? Cool. So I'm a black male in my late 20s. I have long dreads, curly dreads. I'm wearing glasses and an all-grey outfit. So yeah, just to begin, I think it was interesting and something that's come out of the conversations within this forum as well was the importance of education. And the conversation started with Yohann asking Hannah and Kamer about their own experiences as young professionals and when they first had the opportunity to work internationally. And education came up within that, and that resonated with me because that was the first opportunity I had to kind of go international. I did an Erasmus program, and I studied in Berlin for a year, and that was my first time kind of leaving the UK properly and actually spending an extended period of time somewhere. And I always say that that was quite a radical time for me in my own self as an artist, so I can definitely see the power and the benefit that education has in supporting international mobility, particularly in a way that's kind of financially viable for the most part, because, you know, speaking from a UK perspective, you get to have, you know, extra loans and extra support financially, and there's also the safety net of it being within the kind of sphere and context of education. So you're not fully thrown into the deep end, but you have that first kind of experience of, yeah, working and operating in an international context. So that resonated with me, and I was able to network and kind of increase my own stature as an individual through that. And then we talked about kind of the role that arts organizations and funders play in this whole ecology of international mobility. And I think, again, something that's come up frequently in this forum is the role that organizations play. And obviously, you know, the kind of the agendas and the context is forever changing, forever shifting. Sometimes those funders and organizations align with you and your identity and your art form or your artistic practice. Other times things might shift in a different direction. And I think as an artist, as a young professional, you kind of have to get used to riding the waves of these things, and sometimes it comes and it's beneficial for you, and other times there might be times of crisis or times of turbulence or times of pivoting or reimagining exactly what you do. And what is the role that organizations play within that? I think is to be nurturers. I think is to provide platform. What I thought was interesting that came up in the conversation was the importance of a kind of a centralized place for information. And I think even throughout my work in Arts Council, that's something that came up quite frequently, was artists just not even knowing where to find the information they need to understand what opportunities are available, what networks are out there. And that's something we worked very hard through different projects I was involved in, is actually how do we have that central point? How do we reduce that barrier of entry? How do we ensure that the work that we're doing is actually accessible? And that's something that I feel that organizations can sometimes really struggle with, because, you know, I always had this ethos that you need to meet people where they are. And I think it came up earlier about kind of like newsletters or modes of communication, and actually some modes being far more viable and approachable for certain people than others. You know, a lot of young artists might not have the confidence to approach an organization directly. And I think there needs to be an understanding of that dynamic between the institution and the individual. And something I was trying to do within my time in Arts Council was to humanize the organization and get people to understand externally that, you know, we're talking about an institution, but the institution is just made up of a bunch of people that are actually here to serve you and help you. So you kind of have to change your perspective in the sense that you're not necessarily approaching the institution, but how do you build a relationship with individuals within that might be able to further your cause, and making the institution understand that you're not always being perceived by your core values or the people, but actually what are you putting forward as an institution? What is the communication that's going out there? So I thought that was an interesting kind of angle that came up throughout our conversation. We then talked about the cultural mobility guide and kind of which focused on the Nordic Baltic regions and kind of what funding opportunities were out there and some kind of national mapping. We noted the kind of challenges post-COVID, you know, within the research that Hannah and Kama did, they noted that COVID kind of shifted things and changed things, which I think, you know, everybody intuitively knows that there was a big shift following COVID, and the changes that happened to public funding as a result of that as well. And yeah, as an artist, it can be very challenging to navigate this landscape, and there's periods where, you know, more opportunities come your way and less opportunities come your way, as I've said. We then talked about kind of how difficult it would have been to start from scratch. So in the guide that Hannah and Kama worked on, they already had previous versions of it to work from. And that had me thinking, and that just came up in terms of how we're constantly building on what already exists. You know, it's rare that really, really new things emerge, but rather things get reinterpreted, reimagined, recontextualized. And again, what does that mean in a landscape that I think before used to maybe move in decades, but now, you know, every 3, 4, 5 years, there's serious fundamental shifts, which seem, you know, to me, from my observation, to be only accelerating. It doesn't seem like things are slowing down anytime soon. You know, we've touched upon the rise of AI and the kind of change in socioeconomic context. So again, as artists, you're constantly having to renegotiate, redefine, and reinterpret who you are. As young professionals, you're constantly having to go through that process, which can be challenging. But again, as they say, the journey is also part of the beauty as well. I think overall that kind of initial conversation underscored the significance of education, the challenge of the shifting landscape, but I think it was still a hopeful conversation that kind of demonstrated the fact that, you know, mobility is still possible even within these challenging circumstances. We then kind of talked about the lack, or what I perceive to be the lack of long-termism in arts and culture. Things tend to be quite project-based, and again, based on my experiences within Arts Council, it was very hard to really operate and work in a way that looked at 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And in Wales, we have a very interesting kind of policy landscape because we have something called the Future Generations Act. And that act kind of ensures that public bodies have to always think about future generations with their decision making. And that's kind of built into the structures of where we operate in Wales, and is an interesting policy that's kind of starting to be adopted in other places. And I come back to that notion of being a good ancestor. And for me, moving to a way that's more kind of sustainable and long term ensures that we're not doing things that's tokenistic. We're not just parachuting in and making work for 1 year or 2 years and then kind of going and moving away. But actually, how, again, do institutions and what role do they play in ensuring that there's a kind of long-term aim and view in the work that we do, which is very difficult. Of course, public funding is innately precarious. It's innately kind of uncertain. So it's very hard to kind of balance that tension of trying to make long-term changes whilst also, navigating the fact that funding is very finite. We then moved on to talking about the cultural mobility yearbook, and that was presented by Claire, which was filled with a lot of data and interesting takeaways. Some of the things which I kind of felt or knew intuitively, others that was new to me. And some of kind of the key takeaways from that presentation was in terms of the kind of the types of activities that young and emerging artists are doing. We talked about the kind of popularity of residencies, and that accounted for kind of almost 50% of the opportunities that were available to young artists. Individual opportunities for artists were the most popular, rather than those for cultural professionals or organizations. We also discussed the rise in hybrid and online opportunities, again, which was kind of a post-COVID phenomenon. And then we talked about the kind of popularity of cross-disciplinary and visual arts and design. And I think within that, the key takeaway for me was in terms of the fact that I think for most contemporary artists, you kind of have to be multidisciplinary now. I think gone are the days where you can kind of just focus on one art form, but naturally I think the way the world has been is you have to adapt and kind of have multiple skill set if you want to survive. That's how I see it. Even in my experience as an artist, I've had to be able to do various things to be able to survive as an artist. Yeah. And I think, lastly then, to wrap up, I think, was a question that came in terms of, what advice would you give young artists that are starting out today? And there were some interesting things said there in terms of being open and sometimes not, working with what's in front of you, kind of the network that's available to you, the people that you meet along your journey before thinking about the big things, and being able to kind of pivot and adapt to whatever opportunities come your way.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for this great, again, to hear all these takeaways and have a sense also of your own experience and how these takeaways resonate. So far, so good. So then I will turn myself to Ikar, and I will give her the floor. Ikar is a young semi-professional, but she's studying at the university in communication sciences. But she has been a volunteer in several arts or cultural organizations, and she's been a former team curator of the Homo Novus Festival, which is a dear festival I love. I would say that. So Ika, this is your turn.
Okay, it's working, great. So I am a short white person with mostly brown hair. I'm wearing blue jeans and a light button-up shirt. I have glasses on my head, but not on my eyes, because I need to read this and not look at all of you. I wanted to preface this by explaining that, yes, I am studying a social science, and I wanted to just sort of add this as like a caveat to what I'm about to say, because maybe some of the things are not only from the perspective of somebody who has been a young person in culture, but also from just this general perspective of students within an international context. Because the panel that I'm commenting on is the Arts Education and Cultural Management Program, the embedding of international practices. This panel happened yesterday. Our lovely speakers were Paolo and Aparaita, and the moderator was Dr. D. Vidovic. But let's just get into it, sort of. During the panel, there were a lot of ideas that I think sort of reappeared that stayed with me. And the first one is this sort of like general development and implementation of international practice within a lot of cultural spaces and a lot of educational spaces. I really liked Aparajita's comment about the fact that in some ways you can't really be local like at all. I think that's like very profound, and it's very true, because we almost always exist within an international context. For me also, like within communication sciences, this is something that has been very much facilitated by the existence of the digital world, because technically all the time our audience is infinite. And so really we can't be thinking about things in ways of local practice, because a lot of the time it's genuinely, well, it just doesn't happen like that. And that's a good thing, despite what some politicians may say. And that's also a good thing within educational context. I think I also wanted to talk about maybe some of the developments within this educational space for people. I really like the comment from Paolo about how currently Europe is a little bit granted, which is something that I maybe felt called out about, but it's true. I am from here, from Latvia, and in a lot of ways I think, yeah, I'll go to Erasmus someday when I study, and this is very much about also something that was said in a lot of the different panels, that the world is very much getting smaller. Again, that's a very good thing. We are trying to facilitate this international connection between everybody. Some of the benefits are tangible and some of the benefits are not. But despite everything I described, another notion that I heard appear multiple times is the fact that a lot of the time young people may be afraid to sort of take the plunge, to sort of take a more risky career decision, especially within the context of maybe leaving their home country for the first time. And this is, again, a very complicated thing, because when our panelists were talking about their personal experience, Aparajita, she explained that she has sort of been thinking internationally since she was 13, if my notes are correct. And in a lot of ways, I think I've also seen this sort of mindset from a lot of people around me, that a lot of people are sort of, well, maybe not 13, but since high school, preparing to exist within an international context. Not only culturally, a lot of the time, it's a very pragmatic, maybe even a cynical decision, considering the educational opportunities here and abroad. Even within our own sort of arts education, there are just some things, some facilities, some tools that our universities don't have, that may exist sort of abroad, but not here. And I also heard some critique of this way of thinking coming specifically from the audience about the fact that, is it okay if the only reason a student wants to go study somewhere else, or the only reason that a student might be interested in an international practice is because of some professor or the prestige of a university or something like that? And I think it's a very complicated question a lot of the time for students, because like I said, this sort of decision has to be, it's very scary. And sometimes the only thing you can, the only way people can think about it is a very pragmatic way. Like I said, sometimes even cynical. And this is very difficult, I think, both for the people who are trying to be mobile, and for the people who are, and organizations who are, as I would like to say, hosts, because there needs to be a mutual benefit for these people. And sometimes, for some people, they think that some general idea of cultural exchange as a whole might be too intangible or too complicated to think about. But like I said, I do think it's important, and I think also Paolo said something very good, that sometimes you just need somebody to push you, or you just need somebody to open the door, and about this importance of information regarding these events and these opportunities for people, which is why we need to have these talks, which is why we need to have forums and all of these other things, and for people to meet and for people to talk. And the last thing is something that I didn't hear about education and all these other things. It appeared in some other panels, but very minimally, because it's a pretty complicated issue, and it's something that I'm currently depending on to talk to you, and you're currently depending on to communicate, to hear what I have to say. and that's the English language. When I entered university, I found out this was, I think I feel a little bit like a snob saying this, but I was very surprised at how some of the people my age have very poor English skills. And this is not a critique to them. This is because of the educational context, because of where they're from, and how this sort of maybe lack of knowledge of these particular skills, they say that because of this, they're scared to sort of go abroad. And in a lot of ways, I think this is something very, very complicated, because I write in English. I'm talking to you in English right now. The language that we have in common is the thing that is helping all of us communicate. And this normalization of English is something that has, that makes this possible. But at the same time, the normalization of English for institutions where, hey, we're just going to speak English, and then the people who come, they speak English and it's fine, a lot of the time that also makes it more difficult for people, and that might also change the way that people approach these sort of exchanges. Because like I said, Europe is granted, but I would like to go to a place that speaks English. Well, this is, like I said, very pragmatic, very selfish interest of mine. I do speak other languages, but just not that well, or I would be embarrassed going to the grocery store. But this sort of normalization of English has, in a way, reduced my opportunities or my open-mindedness. And like I said, this is an extremely difficult conversation, because English is very necessary for things like this to even exist, for exchanges to even exist. And yet, I think in some ways it has limited some people's options, and it has limited our way of thinking. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
So much. Thank you very much for this. Again, very, very inspiring words. I'm going to turn myself to Karu Treij. As you were also highly recommended by our colleague organization organizing Omonovus Festival. You are a drama teacher and an occasional writer, contributor to the performing arts field here in Riga in Latvia. I'm very happy to give you the floor again for an 8 minute to tell us a little bit about actually the last panel we had this very morning around the called Points of Departure, Points of Arrival, what international circulation of young arts leaders. So the floor is yours.
Right, thank you. So to start off with describing myself, I am a white person in my early 20s. I am putting on my glasses, so unlike Ikars, I will be looking at all of you. And I am wearing a big sweater, skirt, and yellow tights. So the panel that I had the chance to report on was the one you just heard, and hopefully you have it fresh in your memory, so I'll try not to go into too much of a recap. Our lovely speakers were Nusha and Bogdan, moderated by Olu. And right after listening to this panel, my first thought was, my God, I am not the right person to talk about this. But the first thing that came up in the discussion was privilege, the privilege to travel, the privilege to have an EU passport, which is something that I have. And for me, that brought up the thought of, I have all this privilege and I'm not really using it. I've lived in Latvia my whole life. I've never lived abroad. And so what am I doing? And that is something that you talked about as well. And a part of it made me think about the accessibility to find these opportunities for young people, for emerging people, whether young or not. And that was also discussed a bit more towards the end of the panel, but I found it to be very important. It spoke to me a lot because personally, I often feel like I'm in a dark room trying to navigate around, feel what exists. I know that there are institutions and I know that there are programs that I could apply to that could help me, but yet very often I don't know what they are, I don't know how to reach them, or maybe even it just seems like they don't want me because I am a young and emerging artist and I have nothing to provide. So yeah, definitely. And people, you talked a lot, I think in all panels, about the discomfort. And I found it very admirable because most of the discussions about discomfort were about moving to a new place, about being in a wholly new environment. And I feel discomfort right where I am. So that made me think about also the local aspect that we have talked about, because for myself, even aside from my own ignorance in the terms of what institutions exist around me, I find myself being unable to go abroad for longer, just for such simple things as rent or having to take care of my cat or studies or anything else. And I really like this idea of making international work also local. So for example, things like this. I can attend this because it's right here. It's an international event, but I'm allowed to be here and nothing's holding me back. And yes, what else did I write down? Right, coming up on the discomfort, we have the fear aspect, which is also very, very much in me, especially in the rise of right-wing politics, and I've seen myself and other young artists around me discuss how can we continue? What if our identities are not accepted? And even here, like even queer identities, what if I speak out about being queer, or will that have any backlash on me? Will that somehow change my trajectory as an artist? And should I maybe change? Should I adapt to these new policies that might take place? And should I try to make tame and safe art that will be accepted? And there was also a similar talk with the nature in this third panel, that nature is a way to express oneself in a safe way that fits the politics of the place. And it's doesn't say anything particular that you don't want to say, even though maybe it does. And so that made me think, what other ways, how can we express ourselves that keeps us safe as artists, but also allow us to send a message? Yeah, I mean, I think I'll keep most of these for the later discussion, but the very last thing that Olu said was, what can we do to be better for young artists? And I think my response to that would be trust. Trust in the young artist. Of course, sure, we will fail many, many, many times, but so will everyone, and so will the more experienced artists. And sometimes young artists make really bad art, but still, I think it's important to trust and believe that maybe the 10th or the 100th attempt will be okay. And so I am also grateful that, for example, the Homo Novus people took care and let us create something. I think we did okay. And yeah, I think that's the main thing. Trust that the young artists might come out okay.
Thank you very much for these words also. Thank you. I like very much that each of you give and share your recommendations. And I think we have a lot of food for thought, and there will be probably a lot of comments on them, or commitments, you never know. I'm gonna take the floor now before I give the floor to you, as I really want the words of Clara Passarinho to be shared with you. Clara, our Portuguese rapporteur, was actually following the conversation dedicated to this EU scheme, the European platforms, a scheme that is entirely dedicated to supporting emerging artists. which is a very interesting, support programs and format that have been existing for many years. And during this webinar, we invited 3 representatives of 3 very different platforms. Yohann, who is a poet and is organizing a festival here in Riga of poetry, and he is one of the partners of the Versopolis platform, supporting young, and I'm putting a lot of these in the air, young and emerging poets. We had also Odria Calve. Odria works here at the Riga Circus, and she's in charge of being the contact person for Circus Next. Circus Next is an EU platform, also very important to supporting young and emerging circus artists. And we had with us Dina Suhanova, who is working at the Faculty of Architecture here and is the contact person and support for young, and again I'm putting a lot of this in the air, young and emerging architects. It was a very interesting conversation where each of these speakers and panelists were sharing how it works concretely, a EU platform, and how you define and decide who gets to get supported to access visibility and opportunities to work abroad. And here are Clara's words. She summarized the key points discussed, highlighting the very definition of young and emerging, and I think we heard that also during the forum, across different artistic fields. She noted that the concept is tied to professional development rather than age, typically involving artists who have gained national experience first and are seeking to expand internationally. Clara emphasized the influence of financial and geographical factors on opportunities for artists, particularly those from regions facing more barriers. She stressed the importance of adapting mobility opportunities to each artistic discipline and aligning supportive mechanisms with real career trajectories. However, she acknowledged that this framework is largely EU-centric and rooted in Western practices, often overlooking the challenges faced by artists from non-Western countries. Clara highlighted the importance of the visibility for artists, noting that beyond financial support, artists seek platforms that allow them to showcase their work, meet curators, exchange ideas with fellow artists. She emphasized that the chance to present work internationally, secure residencies, for example, and develop independent projects helps to sustain artistic careers. Many artists supported by these platforms continue collaborating with the networks and individuals they encountered, demonstrating the long-term impact of these opportunities. But she also noted that mobility opportunities are crucial for expanding perspectives and provide an invaluable space for change or growth, whatever growth means, reinforcing the importance of continuous international presence. She discussed several limitations of these EU program, the EU platforms, including insufficient financial support, especially for group or collective work, where the fundings tend to be lower and lower for individuals. She noted that the ambition of a project often exceeds both the time frame and the financial resources available, making full realization difficult. Another key challenge is the individual's capacity to establish themselves within these networks. Simply being accepted into a platform or a program does not guarantee long-term success. And again, a lot of this in the air to define success. Clara emphasized the human skills that remain crucial as artists will be comfortable engaging with peers, curators, and institutions to maximize their opportunities. She highlighted tensions, especially around artistic freedom and the demands of the market, noting that EU funding programs often impose rigid frameworks that prioritize measurable outputs and deliverables over the creative process. She also discussed the conflict between artistic mobility and environmental responsibility, acknowledging that many platforms encourage travel and in-person exchanges, while artists are increasingly aware of the need to reduce their carbon footprint and adopt sustainable practices. As a young emerging artist herself, she shared her views around expanding practice beyond national borders. That is not just about financial growth, but it is also about economic sustainability. She highlighted the importance of engaging with inspiring projects and incredible artists and discovering initiatives that challenge and enrich her creative approach. And she insisted on this idea that mobility and international exchange means also a lot of artistic growth. She concluded by emphasizing the importance of shifting towards less competition and more cooperation within the artistic community. And she noted that building supportive, collaborative environments for artists should not be underestimated, as such cooperation can lead to a more enriching and mutually beneficial cultural ecosystem. She highlighted that this approach is key to ensuring a more sustainable and inclusive future. So we clap and thank her for these notes that I'm clumsy reading now. And last but not least, we had a sixth rapporteur right here, and she followed everything because she was our main contact person and coordinator in this beautiful venue. Katrīna Dūka is here with us to report on the second pre-forum webinar that we had focusing on funders, I would say, the very difficult money question. Katrīna is an artist and she's working in theater in, I would say, socially engaged artistic project or community-led artistic project. And you will have the chance to give more details on this. And you have also a foot, and more than one probably, in this very institution, as you are the international project manager of the Riga Cirks and contribute to many other projects. Katrīna, the floor is yours for 8 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for being here. Speaking from Riga Cirks, it's been a pleasure to host you here, and I hope you have enjoyed your time here. I'm open to compliments and complaints later. I will quickly describe myself. I'm a white female in my early 30s. I am of very white complexion, with brown hair and a signature fringe, and I'm wearing black. Yes, I think there was another panel that was wearing all black, and I thought I will match, but okay, we will be on the side matching black. Yes, as Yohann already mentioned, I do wear a lot of hats. I identify as an artist, as a creative producer, as a researcher, and also as an international project manager here, and I think it's important to give this a little context of who I am and where I'm coming from for you to understand more my takeaways from the webinar I participated in. And I started my career already while studying here in BA program in Latvia, and I got to experience international projects right away. So my path has been very concrete and very motivated going forward to the international level. And I have also taken opportunities to study abroad in Erasmus programs, and also I did my MA studies in the Netherlands, and I came back, which is also important to note. And in the webinar that I participated in, there was one key word that repeated several times, and I'm very happy that this key word repeated because it's the needs, particularly the needs of artists, thinking about as funders providing opportunities for international mobility, thinking what are the needs for artists. I've been very lucky and privileged in that sense. I have experienced both being on the side who decides who is going to get this opportunity while working as a creative producer. And I have also frantically written several applications to get international mobility opportunities as an artist. So thinking about the needs and putting them as the #1 determining factor while creating these opportunities, for me shows that there is hope and there is understanding how to create these processes. However, I have also participated or applied in projects where the needs are not understandable or not understood by the organizations. And sometimes it's very frustrating to, as a young or emerging artist, to find the right opportunity for yourself. Sometimes these applications are very vague and sometimes they're too specific. So I really, that's another, maybe I will start already with a recommendation to really take into consideration what are the needs. Because I come from a context where there is no local support or programs dedicated for artists, especially emerging artists, to be sent somewhere to get these international opportunities. Of course, there are a lot of international projects and there are a lot of wonderful organizations who are partners in several networks and platforms who are giving these opportunities or providing them through different kind of financial models. But if I think about my cohort members, my course mates, not for everyone, international mobility is a need or even something of interest. But those few people, I would say, I will only talk about my course mates, the 33 people I met 4 years ago, that not for everyone international mobility is really a need. And I have been thinking about it because for myself, I've always seen myself working somewhere else just because I haven't really found a niche in the current cultural situation of the country I am based. So I have always found some kind of kinship somewhere else, and therefore international mobility is a way to connect to people who think and make and enjoy that kind of art that I want to be part of. And thinking also about needs, something that I didn't hear that often in these conversations are also the needs of the organizations. Because this is connected to another keyword, mentorship. I've been in projects where I have been thrown into the deep end of the pool, and not always I have felt as an emerging cultural worker or artist that there is someone on the other side first equipped to really be a mentor for that person, or just having enough time in their already overbooked schedule and job description to really be that person for this young emerging artist coming into their organization. So I think it's also very important to think not only about the needs of the emerging or young artists, but also about the needs of the organizations. Do they have the right people on the other side to really be this person for the young person? Another question also I think connected to mentorship is the question of sustainability. Very often due to financial limitations, these mobility opportunities are quite short term, maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month, maybe 2 months. But for a young and emerging artist, it's very important there is someone who trusts in you and trusts in you for longer than 2 weeks. It's very easy to go there, do whatever you can do in 2 weeks, and then go away, and you have some kind of you've learned something, you know, you have another experience, but what do you do with that? So maybe this is something also answering, I think there was a question about what are the needs of the young people right now. I think it's really someone to take you in for a longer time and trust in you. I think really working with an artist for half a year, maybe even longer, really trusting and putting resources into helping, developing them could be something that helps for this young professional to really gain valuable insight into how these systems work and really to give back to the organization as well. Another point about the project-based problem, I wrote it down because I've been also listening to your comments and also the audience comments in the 2 days. I think this also comes back to the project-based problem because, yeah, we don't have a lot of systems that are long-term because of funding, because of people not having enough time in their daily schedule to fill it in. But also here in Latvia, most things are project-based. I come from the, I'm not connected to any state theaters. I also, when I want to work with something, either I go to a NGO or a project-based institution, and together with everyone else, even for mobility opportunities that are not separated anymore, we need to apply for the same funder and be in the same competition, no matter you are a young artist, emerging artist, a artist with 20+ year experience. We are all fighting for the same pot of money. So very often, that I've also witnessed myself, some colleagues, some younger colleagues who have just graduated from the academies, everyone is fighting for the same pot of money. Everything is really project-based, and there are no systems that could support long-term activities. And Yohann is telling me that I need to round it up. So I will leave this as my last statement.
Yeah, well, that's good. Thank you very much, Katrīna. Thank you, thank you. I'm creating some frustration, you know, on this side of the stage, but also on that side of the stage, because I know that we have brilliant brains here with fantastic keywords and inspiring recommendations. But we have a lot of people here that are leading or contributing to the work of many arts and culture organizations or institutions. So I would like to see how they respond to your recommendations. Actually, we have mics, and I really want... Oh, come on. Birgit, you start.
Thank you very much. My name is Birgit Ellinghaus. I'm coming from Germany, and I would like to pick up 2 aspects. I was very grateful about your comment about the language. Myself, I'm working in the field of what we call here in Europe world music, but in fact it's music in the context of intangible cultural heritage, so local music from all over the world. And my reality is that we have a Babylon of language we need to use to understand of people of any generation. And I just would like to remind that the majority of people in the world are speaking not English, but Chinese, that we have many speaking Spanish, and if you get into the French world, it's another world. So we have a kind of schisma in the debate, in let's say what we are carrying out, that if we do not use the variety, the diversity of language, we will miss a lot of aspects which are fundamental for the debate of international collaboration and understanding. And I would like to mention that luckily nowadays we have AI, and through AI we have the chance to use, even for such kind of panel debates, apps to have simultaneous translations from various languages. This might create some future perspectives. And the second thing I would like to pick up from your contribution is the need to think across generations. I'm 67, and since at least 20 years I mentor for various artists from different continents, and some in mentorship programs, which I always find not really very, let's say, very powerful, because they are limited in terms of schedule, of time, and the matching carried out by the mentorship organizations is not very often fitting. But on another level, I'm carrying out a lot of voluntary mentorship towards artists. Me personally, I really believe on, and I believe that they need such kind of dialogue to emerge for a long time, so for several years and for several layers of the development of the career. And so I think we have to think more about this intergenerational dialogue to make this world creating better well-being of everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Birgit, and I see Isabel.
Thank you very much for your inspiring talks and very high quality of these presentations. Thank you on the move. I'm talking from my position as an international development manager at the National Theatre in Brittany, and the specificity of that theatre is that we have a higher education acting school inside the theatre. And this has developed the question of what is our responsibility as a theatre to accompany the actors that are coming out of our school. And at that specific moment of coming out of art school and going into professional life is this very specific immediate space that I'm working on or trying to work on. And the two words that I think, for me, at that space that I've heard here is the question of confidence and trust, which I think are really important in this moment. And it's also about creating horizontal relations. So we are trying to create spaces that are spaces of opportunity to create these spaces where you will connect. And what we also seen in when we as an organization create these spaces saying, okay, we need to create spaces, is that these spaces need also to be self-organized, that it's not always the organization that is saying, now we're creating a framework for young professionals that are starting their professional life. It's also to put yourself in and trusting in this self-organization of these spaces. The second thing is, so I really believe that mobility is an accelerator of becoming a professional or becoming conscious that actually you have resources that you can bring in a peer-to-peer situation. But networking is a long learning process, and we continue to learn each day of how to network. So it's about being conscious that everybody has a resource. And when you're in an international environment, it's always so interesting to see that, well, that's how our identities and how we take knowledge of that we have resources to give to someone else. So everybody has a resource to give to someone else, and it's amplified, of course, in an international environment. And in that moment, I think that we have a responsibility to know that sometimes you have the opportunity to be mobile, but maybe as a young professional, that will just be one chance to be mobile. And for example, you were saying, this is great, you're in the international environment here in Riga, but you might not go to the next meeting and continue that path. And so I always feel that we have a responsibility also when we're connecting in these face-to-face meetings to say, well, you're part of my network now, so you can contact. And that we take that responsibility also to keep in touch. And all the good networking we do face-to-face, it's how do we keep that trust and the relation on the long term, especially when you're a young professional. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. I don't know if you, yes, Lina, you want to answer? or comment.
Thank you so much for everything you've said, and I'm so happy that I got to meet you. So, my reaction is more about the English language, because I think the conversation around English is very interesting, and I also wanted to react to someone in the audience yesterday who talked about their specific professional context. They work in a rural area, and they would like to know how they can be international. I don't know if this person is in the room. You're here? Oh my God, I'm so happy you're here, because I really wanted to react, but the time was short. Actually, I wanted to speak of internalized neoliberalism, which was already mentioned yesterday. And I think there's something to be said about the pacing of our sector. We are such an emergency-based sector, which is kind of paradoxical when we just stop a second and think about what we actually do. And we care so much, and we are also within a system that imposes that on us. But I think we also internalize that and also affect the system and make it even more emergency-based, and we get into this loop that I don't think is very virtuous. And I speak about this to go back to the language aspect. I had the opportunity to participate in a mobility program many years ago. I was not even 20 yet, I think, at the time, and the translation was actually a very long process. Like, it wasn't simultaneous. We didn't use apps, and it was actually a voluntary decision from the organization that created the mobility program. Is that you had to listen to the person speaking in their mother tongue, and there were 4 languages, 4 nationalities of us. You had to listen to the person speaking in their mother tongue without understanding their mother tongue, and then someone who spoke both the languages translated everything that has been said, and then everyone reacted. And it was very long. Like, one sentence could take us an entire day. And at the time, we were all impatient and were like, can't we just speak English? Because we couldn't speak English. Everyone spoke English, but we weren't allowed to speak English within the formal moments. And we were all obliged to listen to the German we didn't understand, to the French for those who didn't understand it, to the English, to the Arabic, to the Amazigh. And it, in the beginning, was very frustrating to not be quick about it, but I think it brought me some very valuable patience. And so I think what I'm trying to say is twofold. First, we don't need to be quick in our communication. If it's not simultaneous, if you don't understand each other right away, let's take the time it takes. And my second point is about the experience you've shared with us and your work. I don't think international projects need to be spectacular under an amazing dome. I'm very happy to be here, but I think some international projects can also be small and grassroots, and a connection just between 2 people, 2 regions, not even in an international cross-border sense. And those projects are also very precious, and the example Nyusha gave this morning was also amazing. So yeah, that was my answer.
Thank you, thank you. I have Aparajita, and then I will go to you, Katrīna, okay?
Well, I have 2 things to say. One is that I think we are making English a little bit too big than it is. So internationalization is not equal to only speaking in English, because our students, they are going to Japan or they are going to French partners, and they have to speak that language. So they have to learn where maybe English is not their first language. English is their 4th language. And when I give the introductions, I always say, I mean, being a native speaker myself, it's very easy, but then I always say we all speak English, but do we speak the same English? You know, so let's not make it bigger than that it is. And the other thing I think I missed a little bit, also being one of the panelists, we didn't get the time, and I hope that On the Move will touch it in one of their future forums, is the paradox of internationalization. What internationalization is not. And one of the things, at least for the students, what we are seeing as an institution is that tremendous psychological problems they are having because of moving, because of financial stress, because of not finding a room where they can live. That's on the student side, but also on the teaching side, also on the institutional side. So it's not only a bed of roses.
Thank you, thank you. And Katrīna?
Yes, I wanted to react to the comment about how institutions can also help students go into, and about the student-led or young professional-led activities. I wanted to share one of the best words of advice I received on my first day in the Netherlands in my master's program by the head of the program. You will be unemployable artists when you graduate. And these have been one of the best reality checks, because also a student who goes abroad, also facing a lot of practical challenges, also having a lot of hopes and dreams, and especially going to the Netherlands where there are a lot of companies, a lot of international groups. And I think for a lot of my cohort members, and myself included, that kind of showed that, okay, just getting the opportunity to be somewhere, to be accepted in a school and being part of some kind of groups, it's not enough. You cannot always expect the organization to do all the work. And I think these words have also, at least in my own career, made me realize that I do also as an artist. It's not just that I have to, but it's also I have this chance to also create opportunities, not only for myself, but also for others. That it's okay that I go to an organization, hey, there's an artist-led initiative, would you also want to be part of it? And then it's really about this shared responsibility that I wrote down from today's conversations, that it's not just one side needing to provide everything, but it's really how can we find this shared responsibility in terms of international mobility.
Wonderful, thank you for this. Yes, Lisa?
So we talked about education and the gap after graduating, and I wanted to share a lived experience. Last week I was invited to give a presentation on a Wednesday evening at the Arts Academy in Antwerp. It was meant, we were two speakers to talk about how to build an international network, net residencies, etc. And the presentation was meant for Bachelor 3, Master students and alumni. So about, I would say, 100 students. And there were 6 people in the room. And I was really like, wow, and maybe it was good weather, or maybe something went wrong with the communication, or maybe like a presentation from Flanders Arts Institute is not that sexy, but I thought, as long as these topics, and I'm including also in entrepreneurship, even though we don't like that word, especially in the arts, but what we experience in Belgium is that as long as these topics are not compulsory, they will not be, that's what I feel, or what we feel at Flanders Arts Institute, is that it's normal that the focus of artists who are at art schools going to the art practice and to experimentation and to build an artistic practice, an artistic world, and to get with peers, etc. But because then entrepreneurship and internationalization, it's for after. And it's also something that is being secured by teachers, that first we focus on developing an own artistic language, and then you will see once you get into the field. So we also get questions about entrepreneurship and internationalization from young students after they graduate, because they're like, okay, now I'm graduated, so what do I do? Where do I go? So education, people in education here, I was wondering, are these topics compulsory, or are they optional in your curricula? And then, yeah, how do we bridge education and the gaps of those 2, 3, 4, 5 years of early career building and artistic practice building, etc. So that's what we are trying to do also at Flanders Institute, but there's also, I have the feeling that in the educational system, there's something missing there. At least in Flanders. So I'd be happy to hear examples from other schools.
And this will happen later on because we've reached that time actually where we are closing the panel discussion. So we need, and I really insist, we need to thank our rapporteur for the excellent work they did of sharing not only their takeaways but also putting a lot of themselves in them. So thank you. And for me, I mean, many of the words you use resonate. From, you know, the Erasmus Plus to the confidence and trust, to the building process, to being good ancestors. I mean, many of what you say also resonate with me, and I'm not part of the young court, as everybody can see. Thank you very much. I'm gonna ask us to move around as we are about to conclude this forum. So I will ask our rapporteur to go to their seats now that I would invite my colleagues to join me on stage as we are concluded this event. So Marie Le Sourd, come and join me.
And I would like to ask our colleague from NDPC as well to come, please. And Claire and Bernardo.
Lina, please. We are, you know, reaching that moment where we need to thank a million people. And I'm gonna invite all our colleagues to come, so you also can see the face of, come closer, Claire, come in the spotlight, of all the colleagues that were behind the scene also to welcome you. So, I know, Marie, you have a full list of people you want to thank. I'm going to start, and then you're going to continue. So the first is we absolutely want to thank our dear local partner and member, NDPC, for their trust, their efficiency, their magic behind the scenes. And this magic is not over for all the on-the-move people, as you will hear in a minute. I want to really thank very much all the team that was in Riga Cirks to help us welcome everybody on site. And I will also thank our member and partner HowlRound in America and National Captioning Institute that did such a brilliant work to capture everything that was said. And I will pass the word to Marie to continue.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will continue the thank you, but I think we need a big applaud for all these people and Riga Cirks, the NDPC team. Thank you very much. It was very much worth all the email and the calls to prepare this forum, so thank you. I would like also to, particularly thank also HowlRound for the web streaming and the National Captioning Institute, because they are based in the US, so you can imagine at what time they woke up this morning to do the caption, and they were very accurate, knowing that, as much as possible accurate, knowing that there is no prefixed speech. So thank you very much to them. And we have also, of course, to thank the European Union, that is the co-founder of this forum. So, yeah. Okay. And I would like, of course, to thank my colleague, Bernardo, for the communication, the technical support. That is also a young and emerging professional. I would like to thank, of course, Claire Roslyn Wilson, our data analyst, multitask during this forum, because she was the one also to deal with the online audience. So thank you very much for that. And she's also the writer and the researcher of the Cultural Mobility Yearbook. I really encourage you to read, to know more about data and trends related to emerging artists and cultural professionals. And of course, a big thank you to Yohann Floch, that everybody knows here. Then we have a lot of food for thought to think about the future, and I would like to invite our next collaborator for our next edition of the Forum 2026. Ina, please. So maybe you will be more a little bit in the middle. Oh. Yeah, let's be official. And I pass you the mic also. Ah, you have one.
Thank you all. It's my first time on the Move meeting, and I will bring home all the best, and so many of all the best memories from it. It was really wonderful, and it was wonderful to meet all of you, to engage in so many conversations, and I cannot help to look very forward to our next meeting, and I'm delighted it will be in our neck of the woods, in Skopje, North Macedonia, and yeah, we can probably promise you warm, nice weather in spring and in autumn as well, and also perhaps a lot of good drinks and food, and really, you are all very, very welcome. Thank you all.
So you can already put in your agenda and pencil the dates of the 28th, 29th and 30th of April 2026 in Skopje. And our forum will be focusing on mobility justice, in a way continuing some of the conversation that happened these past days. Marie?
And I just would like also to mention one thing is that Ena Graba is from the Cooperative Act platform that is a member of On the Move, and I would like also to fully acknowledge also the work that they are doing in Balkan country, and at the moment they are also doing a big advocacy work in relation with the student protest in Serbia, and they will have some meeting coming up very soon at the European Parliament, so talking about young and emerging artists and cultural professionals and their hope for democracy and their, hope also like for the European value to be here are also very important. So thank you very much also for your work on this. Okay, so I think we can, the president of On the Move, no, I don't ask you to do any speech, but would say we can officially close this edition of the Forum 2025. Of course, for all our guests here, there will be also a continuation of this conversation during the lunch. And that's as some information also to make for, the tour that is planned this afternoon.
Thank you, Marie. For the ones who are registered for the field visits, you recall there were one group for visual arts, another for performing arts. I don't know, Bernardo, do we have? Mm-hmm. So here, you recall on the first day when you came to Circus, you were given a little piece of paper with the QR code. This QR code is there. So at 2 o'clock, the ones who want to go collectively to Gertrūdes Theater, we gather at 2 o'clock in the yard and we go together. The ones who want to go individually, you can do it, but please be aware that 2:30 we meet there at Gertrūdes Theater. Both groups, the ones who were visual arts, performing arts, we are all together. We start in Gertrūdes Theater, okay? So either 2 o'clock in the courtyard, we go together in a big line. Either individually, 2:30, we meet at Gertrūdes Theater. The QR code for the address.
Is that clear for everybody? It's clear?
Yep.
Okay, thank you very
Super.
much.
Thank you, see you later.
Yeah, see you later. Have a good lunch. Thank you. Thank you also for the technical team once again. Thank you, thank you.